Hey, welcome to this Friday edition. And this episode is going to be about how to get fiscal data for Belize. How to get fiscal data of the Belize government. And the reason why it is important to have this conversation is because right now with the COVID pandemic, the government's budgets are being affected. So it is very important to get data about Belize. So if you are living on Belize or any other island in the Caribbean, then this episode is for you. So stay with me and I'm going to show you everything about fiscal data. Bring your friends because this is going to be an awesome episode. So this is Runi Calmira, and if this is the first time you are here, every Friday now I'm bringing you an episode about analysis and policy. So I have to tell you, I'm from Curacao, and right now we are having a lot of problems in Curacao regarding our budget, the government's budget, because the corona has practically means that the revenues have decreased a lot, and the expenditures help for the businesses, etc., have been increasing. So this is a situation with a lot of islands in the Caribbean right now that the revenues decrease and the expenditures they increase. So it is very important to understand what the budget is about. And right now I'm working on the economic model of Belize, and I'm going to show you more about that economic model. So I have a lot of things working on my computer right now, so I'm going for my screen. Bear with me, maybe it's a little bit shaky, but bear with me. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to share my screen right now. So we are here, and the first thing I want to tell you is, where do you get data? Where would you get data of the Belize government? So my first trick is you have to Google for article 4 of IMF and then Belize. So once you Google that, you will see the article 4 of Belize. Let me see. This is I think this is the one of the projects, and let me go to the next one. This is the article 4. So for each country in the world that has connections with IMF, that's the first tip, there is an article 4 report, and this is a free download. So every time once the IMF has completed, I think once a year or once every 2 years, the IMF has completed their meetings with that country, Belize in this case. They are going to produce a report, and this report has a lot of data in it. So that's the first thing. Any island in the world, I'm focusing on island economies, but you also have this for China and USA. Any island in the world, the first thing is you download this report. And once you download this report, let me see if it gets there. Once you download this report, you will get this report with all the data. Okay, so that's, type your country and article 4, IMF article 4 Barbados, IMF article 4 Jamaica, IMF article 4 Curacao, and you will get the data. Okay, so it's downloading. Maybe when it goes up, I will show you that report. But what the next step is, the report is in a PDF. So you need to have convert this report into the spreadsheet. So that's where you can convert this report into spreadsheets so that you don't have to type everything. So now, after converting this report, you will see that basically this is the result. This is the result where you see actually the data in there. And I'm going to show you some data. So once you convert this report, you won't see these red things, of course, but you will see the tables in there, and the table 13 table. Every page is a table. Every page, every relevant page is a table. So you convert that, and table 14. It is not always table 14. But in this table, let me see. This is balance of payments. So here you see all the balance of payments data. But we are interested in other data. We are interested in, let me see. Went back, I had it. I just had it. Okay, that's table 10 here. So here you see the data. And here you see that we have revenues and grants, and we have expenditures, revenues and grants, and we have the total expenditures of Belize. So total expenditure of Belize is 1.2 billion Belize dollars. And for the year 2015-2016, and it's going a little bit up. And this is a report of 2019. So it contains data for 2015 till 2019. And here you also have projections. So because right now we are in 2020, we will not use these projections because these projections are estimates of the IMF. But here you see that. So what I want you to remember is the IMF uses a system to classify the expenditures and the revenues. So what are the total revenues? Total revenues 980 million Belize dollars. 1.0 billion Belize dollars. And you see here current revenues is current tax revenue, income and profits, goods and services. Now let's look at the salaries. The salaries are the wages and the salaries and the pension. Those are about 480 million. 480 million. So often people are saying there is not enough data, but you see here that there is enough data already. If your island has been visited by IMF, then there is data about the government, also data about the debt, etc. Okay, you see here the debt of Belize, domestic and external. That's about 2.8 billion, and the GDP. So this is the total economy of Belize. Is in 2015 it was 3.5 billion, and in 2018 it was 3.7 billion Belize dollars, and $1 US is 2 Belize dollar. So this is a format, but I want you to know that there are different other formats of data of the government. Let's look at other data from the government, and for that I will go to my update sheet of the Demo Belize macro model, and I will show you here. We already covered all this data, but now I will zoom into the data of the government, because I have updated this data right now of the data with the government. If you have any questions during this live episode, just type in your questions and I will try to answer them. And if you are looking at the replay, just press hashtag replay and then your questions, and I will answer that question. So we went a little bit too much, but I wanted to show you the Belize data of the government. Not like the IMF, but Belize data of the government. Look at this. Let me see. So we have data about the government because the budget address of the Prime Minister also contains data. And I have also collected that data because I want to have data not only from the past, but the most recent data. So you see the IMF report has been in 2019, and it has data from 2015 till 2019. So you already have a couple of years, and now we have data about the budget, which is presented by the government. So this is I copied this data, and this data is from the latest budget address of the government. Let me put that down here. Let me see. Latest budget address of the government. So when you look at the data, let me see here. We have that data. Let me see. Yeah, so here you see the orange part. That's actually the data from the government. So I have colored them here, but you see here the data from the government. And this data is for 2017-18, 2018-19, 2019-20, 2020-21. So this is the budget that the government is right now working on. So you see here the wages and salaries and the pensions. We now have more recent data here. So not only the IMF has the data, but we also have the data of the government for more recent. So what can we do now? What you see here is that the data of the government is another format. So another format, not like the IMF, but another format. Okay? So that's the challenge that you have. You have data of the government of Belize in the budget address, and then you have data from the past from the Article 4, which is also in another format. This is applicable. Let me go to my clean shot. This is applicable for any island in the world. Okay? So this is for any island in the world. You might have a budget address right now with the current data, the current year, and the next 2 years, and you have IMF data. Now the problem is, how do you combine this data? They have different formats, and how do you combine this data into one format? The format we're going to use is the government financial system, and that's the system internationally used. It's a system that is according to the national accounts, and many islands, actually all the islands, have to use it for their national accounts. And also that's the system that my macroeconomic model is built on. So we are going to combine the IMF data and the data from the budget address, and we're going to combine them in one format. And let me show you my screen. So how this works. So finally, you have this format of the model. So I have already combined it, and now you see this format of the model. So these data are preliminary data, so don't shoot the messenger right now and tell me, okay, this is not correct. You are presenting data which is not correct. I've been working on this data, and I've been combining this data together in one format for what I think it is right now. And then I will use this data, and I will share this information with experts on Belize in a special session that we will have maybe later if they join Caribbean Strategic Boardroom, which is my 8-week program, where we dive into economic analysis, simulation, modeling, scenario building of the small island economies in the Caribbean, then we will dive deeper. But right now, you see already that I can create a picture of the government. So I've checked this picture, and this is pretty much the total revenues, is pretty much the data which are actually showing into both the IMF report and the government. So for the last, let's say, 3 years, 2017, 18, and 19, we are using the data for of the budget. And then for previous year, I think these 2 years, these 2 years, we are using the data of IMF, and we already have a couple of data. So, and then for the past, we just make this data right now green, because green is our forecast or backcast in this case, because we are assuming certain things. So the model will work on this data, and we will improve that. A lot of times people ask me, why do you construct this data? You construct this data so that you can get the first impression of the economy, and then later on, when you are on the island, when you have more information, when you have a project to work with a island, then you will get better data. But I show you this right now so that you see that it is not a simple process that, okay, I have to get all the data and then I'm ready. You have to go into the process of getting the data. So what is this telling us? This is telling us that, for instance, let me see the expenditures. You see compensation of employees. This is about 460 million Belize dollars, going to 500. So this is the biggest post, the biggest expense on the expenditure side. Then you have the government financial final consumption. That's buying chairs and all kind of stuff. That's about 250 million. Then you have gross capital formation. So that's the investments of the government. It's about 159 to 170 million. And that's it at that side. And you have a couple of transfers to the households. So I expect in 2020 that these expenditures are much higher, because in here you will see the social benefits, payment for people if they have a general pension system, etc. But this will go on top. So at the revenue side, you see that the indirect taxes, about 777 million, those are the biggest, that's the biggest line item at the revenue side. So they are heavily dependent on indirect taxes, which is taxes on goods and services. Now, and then you see direct taxes and indirect direct taxes of the households and direct taxes of the enterprises. Those are taxes on your income, taxes on salaries, etc. You see that it is about 300 million together. Okay, 300 million together. Now, the reason why this is evenly the same, and the reason why it is red, is because in the IMF report you don't see these two posts separately, and also in the budget presentation of Belize, I don't have this separately. So I have to make an assumption, and that's why I make it red. The assumption is I take 50% for the direct taxes on enterprises and 50% on the direct taxes on household. But what I know for sure is that when you add this together, this is the data from the IMF, and this is the data also for the budget. But I don't know the distribution. So once we talk, for instance, with the statistical office or the Ministry of Finance of Belize, then we can get more specific data, and then this assumption will not be assumption anymore, right? But it will be really the real figures. So what do I want to tell you there? What is the key there? The key there is that you don't have to be afraid of making assumptions. Okay? As an economist, as a Caribbean economist, as a high achiever, as somebody doing the analysis, I want you to make assumptions, and then just state your assumptions when you are presenting something for a policy maker, for a minister, when you're presenting something for the parliament, when you are writing a policy note. I want you to make assumptions and then just put your assumption there. So it is not possible. I don't want you to just say, I don't have the data. What I want you to say is, this is the data from the IMF, this is the data from the budget address, and this is my assumption, how I divided that data. Do you get that? So you see here, we have already been able to create the whole system. Like, let me check you. If you have a question, we have been able to create the whole system just in the national accounting format. So as an economist, it is not only making the macroeconomic model. Let's run simulations, let's start doing it, let's doing regressions, etc. But you have to dive into the data and you have to analyze it. Now, if you are joining the next edition of the Caribbean Strategic Boardroom, which is an 8-week program, 8-week program when the doors are open again, an 8-week program where we dive into there for the Belize economy. You don't need to gather this data because we have this data for you. But if you are working on Trinidad and Tobago, we don't yet have an economy of Trinidad and Tobago. We don't have a database of Trinidad and Tobago. But if you are in one of the islands of the Eastern Caribbean, let me say, if you are one of the islands of the Eastern Caribbean, if you are, for instance, on the island of St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Kitts and Nevis, Grenada, if you are on Dominica, if you are Antigua and Barbuda, Anguilla, if you are on Curacao, St. Martin, we are also thinking about Aruba, to create one of those macroeconomic models for Aruba. If you are one of those islands, then we already have created these. Turks and Caicos and Jamaica, we already have the database, so you will get that database and you will be able to start running the macroeconomic model simulations right away, analyzing the economy. Because why am I building this macroeconomic model is because you will be able to analyze the effects of the economy. Let me tell you a story before I finish. The story is this. Right now, the Netherlands are proposing a package for Curacao. And they are proposing a 7-year package where they have several measures to transform the economy. Maybe cutting expenditures, maybe increasing taxes on the products, the goods and services. So you already see the indirect taxes, those are the taxes on goods and services. They want to increase them. They want to shift from direct taxes to indirect taxes. So they want to shift from taxes on the income and on the wages to taxes on the goods and services. So what does it mean? It means that, for instance, when you are working, you are getting a wage and then the taxes will be lower. But when you're buying products in the supermarket, those taxes will be higher. So it is why the reason why they're proposing that is maybe because they want more people to get employed and they want to have more purchasing power. Now with a macroeconomic model, you can simulate those effects. So for instance, that was the situation in Curacao. But when we have this macroeconomic model of Belize, we are able to also simulate the effects on the economy of Belize of those kind of things. What does it mean if you shift? Let me go back to my screen to show you the data. So what would it mean? I'm not going to answer that question right now, but what would it mean if you, for instance, decrease the direct taxes? So you lower this to 50 million each, and then you want to increase the indirect taxes, which is the taxes on goods and services. What will it mean? What will it mean for the purchasing power of the people? How many jobs will be created? How will this affect the investments? How will this affect the profitability of the Belize economy? Now, you see here, Turks and Caicos. The reason is this was the template of the Turks and Caicos model. That was the model that we created in the last version of the Caribbean Strategic Boardroom. We also created a Jamaican model, and we also collected some data for the Micronesia model. And we added those models to the models that we are already creating. You see, it is a spreadsheet model, but once I'm populating this data with the Belize information, the Belize data, then we will already change the model and make it into a Belize model. So I want to give you some information about how you can contact me. So I hope this was fruitful today, but I want to give you some information how you can contact me. So listen to this information. Hey, stay connected with me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. So, what you've seen in the last half an hour is you have seen how you can get data. And you can get data from the IMF, Article 4 report. Make sure that you get that data. It's not only the fiscal sector data that you can see, but also you can get the balance of payments data over there. But on the other side, you have the government. You have the government information with a budget, and then you can use that information also to combine that. Once you have those two different formats, you can combine it into the government financial statistics, GFS, and in that GFS model, you can bring both of those formats together. Once you have that, you can start analyzing that economy, because the government sector is very, very important. Especially in the times of COVID, you need to understand how the government expenditures and revenues fit together and what are the different components. Once you have that, you have another number of indicators that you can change, and you can run simulations. For instance, going from the direct taxes, so the taxes on wages and profits, to the indirect taxes, which is the taxes of the goods and services. So my question to you is this: do you think that in the Caribbean that we need to move more to indirect taxes, so the taxes on goods and services? So increase the taxes on goods and services, for instance, maybe 12% or 15%, and then leave the taxes on the wages and the taxes on the profits, leave it low. So what do you think about that proposition? We increase the taxes on goods and services, and then so everybody has to pay, but we decrease the taxes on wages, we decrease the taxes on profits. So maybe a 5% profit tax in the whole Caribbean, and a much lower wage tax, so that more people can get a job, that companies can hire people, and that the people have a higher purchasing power. What do you think about that? So tell me below. But before I go, I have one thing. If you want to get the 54 indicators that you need to have so that you can create your analysis, then I've created a golden secret cheat sheet. Today I showed you the fiscal sector, but there are more indicators in that cheat sheet. I have put something together. The only thing you need to do is go to www.calmera.net/waitlist, and you will get right away those 54 variables that you need to focus on. Okay? Not only the fiscal sector, but much more variables. If you click on that link or type that link into the your URL, you will get that, and then you will start doing analysis, because we are focusing on only those 54 variables. We can collect a lot of others, but you need to know how and which variables to collect. And I have cracked the code, and once you have those variables, you are able to create a whole analytical framework. Everything which I do for any island, I'm going to show you. For any Caribbean islands, I'm only focused on those 54 variables. If I get more variables, that's okay. But once I get a variable like that, I can start constructing my economic model. Isn't that great? So click there, and once you join, you will be in my community of high achievers, because once the Caribbean Strategic Boardroom program opens again, when the doors open again, you will be invited to this experience. And the experience is great, because you will be able to create a macroeconomic model, and also you will be able to analyze those economies. So that's it for this Friday. See you next time, next place, the same place, next time, the same time, 4 o'clock, next Friday. Bye.